thanks for, I want to thank Bill for inviting Steve and I today. I don't think either one of us would put public speaking at the top of our area of expertise, but it's good to get out of your comfort zone once in a while and try something new. So we're going to share, go back to our introduction slide here, just share some of our experiences we've had and just some of the daily tasks we do as inspectors. When Bill first asked me to do this, I kind of thought back to my early days as an inspector, and I was very fortunate to, my first 4 years I worked with John Moeller. John was with Webster County for over 25 years, and John inspected paving projects on nearly every road in our system. In the winter, if you were putting plans together or doing some planning, you didn't really have to go back through the files. You could just go ask John what was out there because he was out there when they put it down. I was very fortunate to have those my first 4 years side by side with John, and I of course learned a lot about the daily tasks. But what I really took away most from John were first of all his work ethic. He was always early to the project. Put in long hours, you get that good deep HMA paving tan going. His interaction with contractors, he's always, very, very professional, but also just very friendly. Always had a good relationship with everybody he worked with. And finally, most of all, I took away how he valued other people's experience. And this was a prime example of that. This was our first PCC rubblization project in Webster County. We've done several since. And the first day on the project, so the subcontractor doing the rubblization is Anago Construction out of Wisconsin. Anybody that's ever worked with Anago knows that they're really great to work with. They literally do this process all over the world. And it was our first time doing that process, and so the first day they show up with their equipment and have ask us what we're looking for and what we've got for PCC depth and how old it is, and they make some recommendations, and they start going down the road, and they'd stop after 400 or 500 feet and get off and talk with John, and that whole first morning it was just they were just in constant communication, getting their process worked out, and then from there on, they took off, and John's experience just really let him recognize that these guys knew what they were doing, and just let them do their job. It was going to lead to a successful project. So I really took a lot from that from John. So one of the great things about project inspection is just the relationships that you build. When I was putting this together, I went through my contacts in my phone, and I counted 103 contacts in there of people that I would consider calling for advice. I'm sure there's lots of you out there that have more than that. There's just a ton of great knowledge out there, and people are, more often than not willing to help. Putting this presentation together, Steve and I had never met before today, and Bill put us in contact with each other. We went back and forth with some email and some phone calls, and we did a practice run on our presentation 2 days ago, and we get done with that just over the phone, and we talked for 40 minutes then about just our background and working on various projects. And to me, my list just grew to 104. I just built another good contact, and obviously these are some of the ones that really come to mind for me. APAI, Bill, Larry and Royce and Darwin are all great contacts. If there's a problem out there that they don't have a solution for, they can put you in contact with who does have that solution. Obviously, fellow city and county engineering staffs. At events like this and our county engineers conference, just a great way to talk through what's worked, what hasn't. People are always more than willing to share that information. Of course, we work closely with the IODOT, with, specifically on HMA inspection with our district materials staff. I've worked a lot with Shane and Cheryl, and they're just always a very, very professional relationship. They're always very willing to help. And finally, contractors and consultants. This maybe applies a little more to the planning phase, but there's nobody else out there that knows better how to do these processes than the contractors, and you can get a lot of good advice from them early on before you get to the project. I think about project inspection as part of a partnership. There's more common goals than competing goals, and a little common sense can really go a long ways. The specifications are a great foundation for a successful contract and a project, but there's always these gray areas, and if you can apply some common sense and just be fair and consistent with how you do it, it just seems like it always works out for the best. I try and get to know the crew when I'm on a project. You ask them. You're waiting for mix to come. You talk about how your weekend was, how the game was, how the races were. It just, if you can show them that you're not out there to nitpick or to, you're not out there to play gotcha, that you're out there to build a successful project. It seems like it puts them at ease. More than likely, then they're kind of willing to go that extra mile. I try and help out where I can. It's not. I'm not driving the paver. I'm not driving the roller. I don't mean things like that. I mean just little things like watching out for power lines if you've got boxes up. Filling core holes that you cut that morning. Just give them a lift. I can't count the number of times if I'm driving to somewhere on a project and I see the kid that was out running string line. He's got a 2-mile walk back to his pickup. Pick him up and give him a ride. I get paid back tenfold in that by the contractors. They're always willing to move my truck down the road so I can get my water or get my lunch. I think everybody's top priority usually is, it should be anyway, is to get everyone home safe at the end of the day. This photo is off of Fort Dodge Asphalt's mill, and I think it kind of picture it speaks 1,000 words. I just share a story from my first day on an asphalt job. We're doing cold in place inspection, and John had a family emergency come up and called me out to the grade, and he gives me the list of everything I've got to do for the day, and he takes off, and so I'm locked in on the tasks that John gave me, and checking depths and going through everything, and it came time to get an emulsion sample, and of course the cold in place train, it just keeps moving. It walks along just a little slower than walking pace, and so I'm walking alongside it. I get my sample, put the cap back on, turn, and almost walk right into open traffic. There's a pilot car 15, 20 feet away from me coming. The paving, the crusher foreman, he was paying attention to what was going on. He grabs me by the shoulder, "Easy there, buddy," and that day he saved me at least an arm or a leg or maybe something a lot more. That was a great wake-up call for me, and I try to be that guy. I have not had to physically grab somebody, but I'm also not afraid to, if there's a pilot car and traffic's coming and I see a couple people, they're maybe just concentrating on what they're doing, I'll just holler out, "Hey, pilot car's coming," just little things like that. I think at the end of the day are appreciated. So signing is it's an everyday task, and it's not just out there for everyone out there working, but obviously out there for the traveling public too. And it's an everyday job because of the weather. The wind knocks over signs. because of vandalism. We had a closed bridge with safety closures up. I got to a project early in the morning at 5:30, 6 o'clock, and the safety closures are all strung off in the ditch, and I'm kind of putting things back together, and I noticed there's a pair of vice grips hanging off the beacon on the top of the Type 3. Somebody had, in the middle of the night, tried to steal the beacon off the top of the Type 3. I don't know what they thought they were going to do with it, but just silly things like that. Most of the, all the contractors have great signing technicians, signing superintendents, but a lot of times they've got other responsibilities too. So just as an inspector, anytime you can help, just standing a sign back up, checking, keeping an eye on the condition and the placement and the visibility of those signs is always a good thing. The TC series of the standard road plans and the traffic and safety manual have a lot of great guidance as far as your distances and what you need to do, but you need to have, again, use a little common sense and make sure that those signs are visible. They're not behind a tree or another sign. Just, it's always a good idea to just do a drive-through at how the public would be driving through and make sure those signs make sense to you. This photo was actually taken immediately after the next two photos, which, so I came across this one morning. We just got done cutting cores. I was taking them back to the plant, and there was a young man that was on his way to work, going too fast, probably on his cell phone. Luckily, this was before we were set up. There wasn't anybody else on the road, and he was ultimately okay. He walked away with just cuts and bruises and a banged up truck. But I was very glad that the contractor had signs up and in good condition, because in today's litigious society, you never know where there's going to be some liability. Deputy came out, wrote the accident report, noted that signs were in good place, and that was the end of it. That we didn't hear any more about it. So just it's always good to just stay on top of that kind of stuff. Lighting, that's something that I don't know that's referenced anywhere in the specs or the construction manual, but I think it's one of those little details that's really important. I was fortunate enough in 2015 to get a new truck, and I think the number one item on my list when I wrote the specs for it was just the biggest light bar wheel it'll make. I've always been impressed with Fort Dodge Asphalt. They, early in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, 6 o'clock, they're out there getting equipment fired up, getting stuff fueled up for the day, and you can see their pickups from 4 or 5 miles away. And the public that's traveling to work, maybe coming home from a late work shift, they can't help but notice that, and it just lets them know, hey, there's something going on here. I need to pay attention to what's going on. Of course, the start of any successful project is communication, and for an inspector, the pre-con meeting is going to be most likely your place where that's going to start. You can exchange contact information. You're going to look at the contractor sequence of operations, how things are going to flow through the project, special areas of concern. Like our paving project last year was adjacent to in the next county over. They're building a very large hog processing facility. So we had some very significant oversized loads that were going to be coming in through our project corridor during our project. And there's times that those loads are okay, and there's times you don't want them out there. And getting everybody on board at the pre-con a month ahead of time just can save you a lot of headaches. It's a lot better to know when these things are coming than to look up one day and you see a load like that coming down your brand new mat. Things like testing requirements are a great pre-con meetings. The best place to start to hash those out. Utility conflicts, that's you can do all the planning you want to, but until you get everybody in the same room talking about what they have where, It's really, that's the best place to get on top of those. And also just coordination with landowners and businesses. It's probably going to be your first chance really to talk to the contractor about how we plan to deal with, you know, people that have other priorities. You know, communication with the public. This was me having a little fun with my daughter. I took this picture and texted it to her and told her the sign was broken. But you know, we're very fortunate in Webster County. We've got 2 changeable message boards. We utilize them a lot on paving projects. Try and get them out there, you know, a week ahead of time. Just let them know a project's coming, and I think it does a lot to just help get some of that traffic diverted. Social media, that's something I think we could do a better job at least in Webster County. We don't really have that yet, but there's a lot of counties I do follow in the DOT that really utilize that and do a good job, and even, you know, things like the 511 app. And of course, there's just the old kind of standby methods of press releases and mailers. Those things are all important. You know, good communication with the contractor during the project. Email, text messages, Doc Express. These are 3 things that just 12 years ago when I started, I didn't have at my fingertips on the grade, and now I do. You know, specifically, group text messages work very well for tracking. You know, I always set up a group text with myself, the foreman, the superintendent, and the plant, and at the end of the day, you know, we put down what we have for quantities, and everybody sees it, everybody's seeing the same message, and that way if I get 3-4 days down the road, and let's say I got busy at the end of the day, I forgot to put a number in my books, then I can just go back in my text messages. There's the quantities. I know it's already a quantity that everyone's agreed to, and I've got it right there. So I think from here, I'm going to turn it over to Steve to keep talking about some communication with contractors. So,
good morning. I've been asked to speak with you about my experiences through the asphalt division. I'm out of the District 6 Davenport office. I've had really good experiences with asphalt. We've got some excellent contractors out there. You can learn a lot from them. Just got to be willing to ask. Major thing with it is communication. We deal a lot with the different aspects of it. Talk to your plant people. Get to know them before the plant ever fires up. Introduce them to your monitors. Let them know what you're going to be looking for. Just certain things like that. If they got an issue, let them know the chain of command. Hey, let me know if you got an issue there. We'll deal through it. No problem. The other one is the road foreman. He's the one you're going to deal a lot with out on the road. If you got an issue with your width, your depth, anything like that, talk to him. And biggest thing is, those road foremen can tell you a lot about if you have an issue, how to resolve it. You can learn a lot from them. The other one is the project superintendent. He's the one that's verifying all the numbers at the end of the day. So just make sure you stay in contact with them. You'll have a good experience with them. Maybe the first thing out of the day, you're going to cut cores. Get with the CPI. Ask them when they want to cut them. Normally, most contractors want to cut them first thing out. Get an idea with them. They'll have the core sheet. You'll have the core sheet. Most of the time, I've got my cores all laid out, so it does not take long. Half hour, 45 minutes. They can buzz through and cut cores pretty quick if you've got everything done out ahead for them. You may want to ask them to use a flagger because you're going to be out in the live lane. Well, they're setting up traffic control for the next day. You're going to be cutting cores. Pretty good thing with them. Once the cores are cut, we take possession of them. I'll transport them back to their lab. That's where the monitor will be testing them there. So, like I said, The other thing was with that traffic control, that's a major concern anymore with litigations. Check the signing, check the spacing, make sure it's out there. If something's not right, talk to your project manager, your road foreman. Road foremans are usually the ones putting that stuff out there. Like I said, if something doesn't look right, chances are it's not right. But like I said, just chat with them. The other thing is the flaggers. You always want to agree with the flaggers of the road foreman. If you run through and count, check with him first thing in the day. He may have something different. Tell me how you're counting your flaggers. A lot of times they think they're getting paid for the flagger in the pilot car. They're not. So, like I said, just square off right away. It'll be a lot easier on you in the end. Paving operations. You're always going to want to start location. That's what you're going to deal with most of the day. If you know where you're starting at, that's what you're going to run your yields with. You're going to go down through there. First thing out, you're going to get a mixed temp. You're going to want to make sure that's above your limits. It's always going to be crowding a little bit because most of your trucks are cold the first round out until they get warmed up. Don't get excited about it. Just let them know, hey, you're crowding the lower end to that temperature limit. Let's get a round in and they'll be warmed up after that. Normally they are. You're going to be checking your width and your thickness on it. A lot of times when you're checking that, you're getting PWL on your 12-foot lane, but if they're pulling a shoulder with it, it's non-PWL. So like I said, just keep an eye on that there when they're coming out. The thickness, if they're laying a 2-inch mat, you should be getting 1.5 inch compaction on it. So like I said, they've always got the sticks in the back of the paver. Just check the poker on the depth of it. Poke it a few times, like I said. They're always poking it, you can too. The roller pattern, that's establish your first time out. When they're going through and establishing a roller pattern, that's what they're setting their density off of. If that breakdown roller's making 3 passes, just keep an eye on him, making sure he's getting his 3 passes. A lot of times you can tell when you're not getting your density, keep an eye on it. We've come across where a new individual got on a roller and he hurry up and made his 3 passes and then he'd be on his phone. I stopped and mentioned to him, hey, you're not going to want to sit on that mat very long. Well, I got my passes in. I said, yeah, but when you're sitting on that mat, you're creating indentations that's going to show up in the profile. And they aren't going to like that. So just talk to them, communicate with them. Those guys are young too. Segregation issues. Earlier in Jeff's slide, he had where they were pulling a sample off the mat. If you've seen on the shoulder, there's a lot of segregation issues. If I was there, we'd be talking. That's one thing we're looking at. Most of the time, your segregation issues are going to come when you got trucks rolling in one right after another and you hit a gap. They're going to fold those boxes in to pick up that mix out of the corners that's been sitting there for a couple hours. She's going to be touch cold. She's going to show up in there. And that one really showed up quite a bit. When we're checking our yields, after you've been running a couple hours, you can do a yield check on to see kind of where they're sitting at. If you're getting around that 95%, you better be checking your thickness because you're starting to crowd a little bit there. It's just some of the experiences I've had. In the safety wedge, that we're looking at quite a bit. I know in the old days we always allowed you to pull that rock up at the end of the day in that, but it's kind of hard to get it done when that mat's pretty fresh yet, so that's why we went to the safety wedge. It's all on litigation issues. At night, if somebody runs off and we're liable for it, that's why we're pushing for that safety issue. We still like to have that rock pulled up at your earliest convenience. On those hot box locations, normally when I turn into the plant monitor what we're running for tons for the day, he's going to make up the hot box locations. He'll be dealing with the CPI when they come out and grab them. They'll be getting all the information on them. I know Jeff talked about doing it all by barcode. I'm still old school. We still throw in a paper copy too. Some of us don't like change very well. So I always throw the paper copy in there. Boxes still have all the information wrote on it, but you still got your barcode. It's whatever you're comfortable with. Some of you CPIs, like I said, if there's something you don't quite like about it, talk to the inspector. They're more than willing to work with you. Temperature of the mix on the road, like I said, we pull that every 2 hours. We're looking at that to make sure that mix is coming out hot enough. Tack coat's another one. I know everybody first thing in the morning likes to spray the tack and lay mix, but we still need to make sure it breaks. We've had some areas where the contractor crowded it and it slid and moved. Normally during the summer months it does not take long for that to break, but when you start to crowd the fall and it's cool out, that tack's not going to break as fast. We still have to wait for that tack to break. That's just some of the things we're looking at. We may be sticklers on it, you don't like it, but we don't want that mat sliding on us. Going back to those depth checks, like I said, if your yield's not coming out, my advice is hit the depth check right away. That's going to tell you where you're at. At the plant, stay in contact with your CPI and your monitors. Those monitors are there to witness your cold field samples, your binder samples. They're just witnessing what you're doing. You know, you're loading the tins for them, but they're keeping an eye on the things. Like before I mentioned, I'm turning in the tonnage, what that road foreman said. We're looking at 2,500 ton today. He's the one setting the hot boxes up for them. He'll be running the cores from the previous day. After I get done cutting them, I'll take them to him. He'll be testing the cores. Normally the CPI will do the trimming of them. If we get too far, he'll trim them off. They'll test them there at their lab. The other thing is that monitor is going to be walking around your plants. He's mainly checking your bends to make sure you're not overloading them and intermingling. Checking your belts. It's just doing a walkthrough. I always tell the CPIs, your monitor will be out there. Do you have any safety concerns around there that he needs to be aware of? Every plant is different. The people at the plant know where a tight congested area is. Just let them know, hey, stay out of this area here. We don't want you in there. We can still visually see it from some other place. Once that plant report's done from the previous day, that monitor's going to overlook it. He's going to check on his core information. He's going to check on his hot box information. He's the one that turned that into the CPI, so he's going to double check to see everything that he's turned in is what he gave to the CPI. Once he likes it, then it'll get sent to me and I'll oversee it. Normally we like to get that done before noon. That way if we got any issues, it can get taken care of the next day or two right away. Diesel fuel, we don't want it. I've heard every story from every trucker out there. It doesn't hurt a thing. If it doesn't hurt a thing, we do not want it. We will oversee that. If we see trucks that are getting out of line and going behind rock piles, we're going to go back and check and see what they're doing. Truckers do not like it when you pull them out of commission because they're spraying diesel fuel. Well, we're telling you right away, we don't want it. Going back to that safety wedge, it's just like I said before, we always allowed you to pull up that rock at the end of the day, but when that mat was still pretty tender, you couldn't get out on it. We always had that 2-inch drop off. If somebody went off of it, they just couldn't retrieve themselves, so we went to the safety wedge. That IM 502, it'll tell you what is accessible out there. We're looking for that 30 to 35 degree taper. That allows somebody that does veer off the edge of the road, they can still recover. At the end of the day, when we get our final ending location, getting the tonnage, getting the waste, that's always got to be verified with the road foreman. He is your first one to verify because he is the one that received everything out on the road. If you have a truck that went down during the day and he didn't see that, let him know, hey, truck so-and-so, we did not receive him, he went down. He's the one that we want to verify with. Most of the time, I've either got a scratch paper, anything, I'm turning in my tonnage, my waste, my start and end stations. Like Wes said earlier, trust is a big thing. I don't know how many times I've turned one in at the end of the day and I said, hey, do you like it? And he said, I trust you for it. I've earned a lot of respect from these contractors out here. I've got a very good working relationship with them. Check on your square yards for the day. Most of them shoulders are done in square yards. The thing that's probably going to throw you off the most if you got an equation out there. If you're going from point A to point B and there's an equation in there, that's where you'll get off in the square yards. Those random core sheets are something that myself, the inspector out on the road, is going to put together. When I've got a really good idea where that ending station is going to be at, I'll get these core sheets put together and I'll try to get some of these cores, the earlier ones, laid out. So by the time that last load's out there, I can be up there, getting my information, finding out where that last core is going to sit. Some contractors have come in and said, hey, we never had this in the last district we were in. We just drove down the road and picked a spot, cut a core. But how do you know it's random? The sheet here, that's what it does. When you put in the locations, it randomly spits it out to you, so there's no deviation on, well, this looks like a better spot than that. Just use the form. It works out well. It's user-friendly. And for the matchup, it's going to give you your centerline joint cores too. Once you got everything verified with your road foreman, kick that stuff over to your CPI because he's the one going to be doing your plant report. Let him know that you verified with your road foreman your tonnage, your waste, your ending location, your start location. You're going to have that hot box location sheet there that gives all the information, the time, the tonnage, the temperature. That's all stuff he needs for his plant report. Once again, we've already run into issues. Well, we didn't get that in the last job. They need that to give you what you need for a plant report. If you're not giving them the information they want, they're not going to give the information you want. Your mixed temperature, that's done every 2 hours, so every 2 hours you're going to have a mixed temperature. I admit I have not put them on there from time to time. I forgot about them. CPI will call me, hey, you didn't have the mixed temperature on there. Well, let me check my sheets. I've got everything wrote down on scratch paper. Communication is the biggest thing out there, and it's probably the most relaxed thing when you're going into other areas. All I'm telling you is communicate with your people, and you'll have a good turnout. With that, is there any questions? Thank you. Yeah.
Wait. We have a question. Can you hear me? Okay, we have a question.
How long have you been using the safety edge run?
I want to say it started about 5 years ago when it started coming through. A lot of contractors didn't like it. But what we're looking for is we still need to have the public be able to, if they run off the edge of the road, they can still recover from it.
So is this case by case, or you guys automatically require the contractor to do that?
Pretty much so, anything's coming with the safety wedge anymore.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, one moment.
So I'll just add that, with the safety wedge, it's a future maintenance problem also. We have problems with edge rutting, with traffic, 10 years down the line. So with that safety wedge, it allows still the car, without having to keep the rock up next to the shoulder. So that's the reason for the safety wedge also.
No more comments or questions? Okay, then we'll take a break.